Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa and his delegation have defended the reports of a white genocide in South Africa, this during a meeting in the Oval Office with the media and US President Donald Trump. Now, Trump played a video purportedly showing evidence of a genocide of white farmers in South Africa. And Trump accused South Africa of failing to address the killing of white farmers. But for more and a greater perspective on this matter, and of course what unfolded yesterday, we joined virtually now by former South African ambassador to the US, Welile Nhlapo. Mr. Nhlapo, thanks for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina, and good morning to your viewers.
So first off, your impression of that engagement between the US President Donald Trump and our President Cyril Ramaphosa?
I've been in that space before. I've been in that room before. What was different is the optics. But even at that, I'm also happy that they tried to prove that there's actually genocide in South Africa by bringing that footage that they brought into the room. And the response allowed our team to be able to deal with the issues. Because the concept of genocide and what was shown there are completely two different issues. And of course, what it also says is that as South Africans, we've got to be careful all the time, whatever we say and do, because images and news move very fast and are quite massive and can be used and abused for any occasion. But I'm happy that they showed that and the argument sparked the debate and the discussion that was important for whoever was viewing that little drama that unfolded. Quite unusual, I must say.
Indeed. Do you think that the South African delegation should have been surprised by that, given that this is such a hot button issue at the moment, given the 49 people who also went to the United States seeking refugee status? How effective do you think that the president and the delegation's efforts were to attempt to fend off that false assertion about white farmer persecution and the wider criminal issues in South Africa?
No, I think it was for the U.S. To prove that indeed the actions they have taken in bringing in those Afrikaners, that there is a legitimate threat that they are being faced with, and therefore needed to be given this special accommodation by being invited as refugees at the time when the very same administration have taken a particular decision in terms of bringing in foreigners into that country or tolerating their stay, if one can use that phrase. And
also we saw South African golfers. How significant was the presence of figures like the billionaire businessman Johan Rupert and the two South African golfers in that delegation?
Well, you see, we often talk about soft power, and I think this was an element of that in display. To make President Trump comfortable, you bring the people he knows, the people that he associates with. For the first time, to hear from them about an issue that they have never discussed before. And in the presence of their president and the media, to be able to dispel in the manner in which they did the gravity of what was being attempted to be proven that there is genocide in this country. I think it was quite useful because you do need ordinary citizens, and particularly those that are well known, who never participate in that space.
And then just in terms of the messaging that they imparted, did you find that effective in terms of, just bottom lining the fact that there is no white genocide in South Africa?
I think it was important to dispel the fact of genocide, but establishing the truth that violence does take place in different spaces and it affects everybody. And therefore, there is a need to build the capacity to deal with it. Amongst other things, the very purpose of the visit to attract investments and then through trade to grow the economy and begin to deal with some of the structural causes of the violence that we're seeing taking place in our country.
There was also talk about peace negotiations and, the part that the United States has been playing, and of course, President Cyril Ramaphosa bringing in what South Africa has been doing on this front. There was a brief touch on the war in Ukraine, also what's happening in the DRC. And we heard the U.S. president, coming forward very almost boastfully to say how effective he has been in those negotiations in the DRC, for example.
Well, I think our president was attempting to strike a common chord in terms of what they are doing in common in different ways in the same spaces. But of course, it has his ego, and President Trump took advantage of the situation to boast about what he is doing, to confirm that indeed he is a man of peace and that his efforts are being acknowledged.
And there has been, of course, the question of the G20 and Trump's attendance later this year, also the foreign ministers' delegations, and why the U.S. has not been attending these meetings. So again, do you think that we came off better in that regard?
We took our chances because we know exactly where they stand. It has to do with the very purpose of the meeting and the theme, something which for them is not an area of interest. They are moving away from all those issues. And they've made it very clear in the campaign and very clear also in the statements that they've been making. The very same morning, the Secretary of State did re-emphasize their position in terms of their attitude towards some of these issues that are being dealt with as part of the theme of the G20.
And then, of course, we also had, as part of that delegation, Zingiswa Losi of COSATU. And, she made quite a valiant attempt at sketching a picture for the U.S. delegation there about what the investment in South Africa would mean should it be withdrawn. And again, Trump being a businessman, does that strike a chord with him, do you believe? And would this go some way in trying to alter his view on South Africa, given what he has been saying and executive orders being passed as he has been doing?
I don't think he will shift from what he's been saying so far. What was good news for him is to hear that despite everything else that they have said and done, South Africa is still open for investments, and that American investments are secure, and that there is a mutual benefit in the investment flows into South Africa and out of South Africa into the U.S. in terms of employment creation and contributing to the economy, because that's what America First is all about. That's what the domestic imperatives of the Trump administration is all about. And that's what we want to promote trade and investment into our country in order to deal with the structural problems of our economy, and so that all the unattended or intended consequences of that, and particularly the structural problems and the social issues that emanate out of that, can be adequately addressed.
And just a final one, Mr. Nhlapo, if you look at how this relationship between South Africa and the U.S. Has taken a turn under the administration of Donald Trump. And to be fair, that strain has been coming on for a while, but, you know, it certainly took a sharp turn in the wrong direction since the Trump administration came into being. But looking at what's happening here and the makeup of the delegation that accompanied President Cyril Ramaphosa, well, having set up this meeting, many are still critical, though, of who was in that delegation. You touched on the soft diplomacy with the golfers. But again, what is this saying about South Africa and our strategy when it comes to the United States at this point?
The real negotiations take place behind closed doors. And I think in his briefing to the South African media after the engagements, the president did indicate that the rest of what they have agreed upon in principle and the documents that they have submitted and the responses in part that they had got from the Secretary for Commerce have already established the basis for what is likely to emerge as an agreement on the issues that we wanted to use the president's term to reset. But of course, what I didn't hear, which I hope is also going to be something they will deal with, is to make sure that we have an effective presence in the U.S. so that we can be able to deal with these issues in the manner that we've been able to do with the past. We cannot continue to have that embassy without the head of mission, without the appropriate other components of the mission that reflect our commitment and our relationship to take these processes forward. And the mechanism of managing our affairs that existed in the past will have to be brought back, because it is within that dynamism that a lot of issues are getting cleared and we find each other. Otherwise, you open the gap, other things intervene, and you end up with the confusion that we found.
Well, thank you so much for your insights there. That was Mr. Welile Nhlapo, the former South African ambassador to the United States, unpacking President Cyril Ramaphosa's meeting with his U.S. counterpart, Donald Trump, last night.